Returning to the power tower after securing the silver medallion at the city arena, the same dozen or so dark elven guards continued to stand watch here, still unwilling to let us pass. "We told you, you can't enter our tower without a silver medallion." The guard captain squawked again, preparing to throw us out by force. "Something like this?" I asked, showing the drow the silver medallion I now owned around my neck. It felt good to watch the dark elf be forced to swallow her pride, back down and step aside, allowing our party access to the entry hall beyond. Reaching the magical door inside, I pressed the silver medallion into a shallow recess intended for the object. At once the door creaked open, allowing entrance into the tower's grand palace room beyond. As we entered the palace room chamber and looked around, we were surprised by the grandeur and decadence of the area. Fine paintings adorning the walls, a high, domed window casting magical light from above, an opulent throne near the far southern wall and a variety of other pieces of furniture and luxurious objects fit, well, for a king. Another dozen or so drow guards stood about in strategic places, along with at least half a dozen regal townspeople, their fine clothing a perfect match for the splendor of the palace room here. Given all the misery and squalor we had experienced outside the power tower, here the people seemed to lead rich, easy, decadent lives. Owning a silver medallion meant a life of luxury, it would appear, and likely at the expense of everyone else throughout Leakley. Sitting on his opulent throne was none other than Lord D'Enzeth himself, the middle-aged dark elf looking smugly about as if he didn't have a care in the world. Our sole reason for visiting the power tower, I quickly led my party to the well-dressed humanoid, several guards watching us approach as well. "Well done with the procurement of a silver medallion," the drow elven lord announced as we arrived, still rather suspicious. "Of course, medallion owners must swear their undying fealty to me, kiss my ring to prove your allegiance." Several of my heroes reacted in shock, the request both disrespectful and disgusting. All eyes then turned to me, how to handle the request. Surprised and even a bit offended, I gently declined the offer, explaining that we weren't here to side with anyone, we were here to help the drow with its current problems and then move on. My party agreed, glad that I had chosen this more honorable approach. "Word is, you've been asking a lot of questions throughout the city," Lord D'Enzeth began, continuing to act suspicious. "What business of yours is it to be poking around like that? I can assure you, I have everything under control." "That's what Lord Hefrallan said back in blue," Cartha whispered in my ear and rolling her eyes. Why do all these lords think just the opposite of what is true? Yes, we had seen this before. Powerful officials acting like everything was fine even though they certainly were not, and this time I wasn't going to play games. "Lord D'Enzeth, we beseech you, help us to help your own people." Attempting to play the honor card, I asked Lord D'Enzeth to simply do the right thing and accept our party as, likely, the only heroes available to solve the mysteries here in Grimtyr and help save everyone. While righteous, the dark elf didn't seem interested in the least. "You, humans, seem to mean well," the drow leader returned, promptly dismissing our pledge to help. "But I can assure you, I have things under control. My advice is to not stick your nose where it's unwanted. People often get hurt doing that." Looking Lord D'Enzeth squarely in the eyes, it was clear he was telling us to back off. He didn't need, want, or appreciate any help. If we were going to try solving the mysteries here within Grimtyr, we apparently wouldn't be doing so as an official ally of Lord D'Enzeth. "What are you hiding?" Eswin demanded to know, trying a new and, likely, unwelcome tactic with the drow lord. About to step away, Lord D'Enzeth stopped, turned back again to face all of us and considered for a moment, looking us over as if we had become a genuine nuisance to him. "Look. You are unwelcome guests here in Leakley and I could have all of you killed immediately if I wanted. We all know there is something going on here, but until I can deal with it, it's business as usual. The poor and destitute remain where they are, the richer houses control them and they all answer to me. I don't want anything to unbalance the status quo, especially a bunch of do-gooders who know nothing." "That's quite the selfish attitude to take," Cartha responded, not afraid to speak her mind. "Your people are dying all around you, and all you care about is keeping everyone in line? Power and control are everything." Lord D'Enzeth countered, convinced of his own rhetoric. "It's my city, my riches, and my right to do as I wish. Besides, we've survived here for 1,000 years, we can handle a little more adversity. So, you will allow your people to suffer and die, just so you can keep what you have?" Cartha clarified, disgusted with the dark elf's position. "Doesn't their lives matter to you, even in the slightest? It's every drow for himself, the Lord sneered, about to turn away. And I will do whatever it takes to make sure I stay on top. Whatever it takes. My party stunned with such illogical obstinance, all we could do was watch as Lord de Enzith provided a last, fake smile before turning to leave, the encounter all but over. Guards. Our human guests were just leaving. Escort them out and don't ever let them back in. The guards here did as they were commanded, escorting us back outside and ensuring that we were never allowed to return. The power tower a dead end, we decided to wander south of the arena and see what we could find, quickly encountering a small stone building. Searching the building, it was closed and locked, obviously intended to incarcerate those who had violated some local law. It may or may not have been occupied, but given that it was magically sealed, we probably wouldn't be finding out what was inside anytime soon. A lone dark elf guard stood before the door, watching us warily. Move along, humans, the guard warned from 10 feet away, placing a hand on the hilt of his sword. Nothing here to see. Which implies there is something here to see, Redfern returned with a grin. Who are you guarding inside? None of your damn business. The drow snapped back, grabbing a small wooden whistle around his neck. I can have a dozen more warriors here in moments to make you leave, so be on your way. The dark elf put the whistle to his mouth, about to blow. Wait a moment, the guard suddenly commanded, taking our party by surprise. The drow elf stepped to me and carefully examined the silver medallion around my neck, ensuring its authenticity. He then looked at me again and bowed his head, speaking to me in a much softer and respectful manner. My apologies, Exalted One. I didn't see the status of your might and power. Are you here to see the prisoner? Having no idea who this prisoner was but going along with the ruse, I matter-of-factly asked about the prisoner, doing so in a way that sounded like I already knew who he or she was and simply wanted to know how the presumed dark elf was doing. He's not at all well, the guard acknowledged with a soft and respectful voice, as if he were talking about his own father. He's probably got just a few days left. I nodded without saying a word. The drow guard turned, stepped over to the magical door leading into the jail, and quickly unlocked it with an equally magical key. The door creaked open several inches, allowing us to peer inside. He's in the furthest cell on the left. The door is open, he's certainly not a flight risk at this point. I nodded again, then led my party past the guard and into the building beyond. The jail's interior was what I had expected, an initial entry area followed by a long hallway with iron bars on both sides, perhaps 10 cells altogether. Rather surprisingly, nobody seemed to be here, a silence I wasn't quite expecting. Remaining cautious, I led my heroes down the hallway, carefully inspecting each jail cell and finding all of them empty, until we reached the far cell on the left. There, within a cell that looked more like a fancy hotel room than a place of incarceration, we found a very old drow elf lying in bed, his eyes closed and the man barely breathing. The scene bizarre but no threat, I led my heroes into the jail cell and slowly approached the ancient elf. By the looks of things here, I suspected that the man before us was once quite wealthy and powerful, but he was now literally on his deathbed, and it appeared he was dying alone. Moments later, the elderly drow opened his eyes and looked about, noticing our party and quite surprised. Who are you? We've come to help all the dark elves here in Leakley, I began with a soft smile. But first, is there anything we can do for you? Humans, in Leakley? The elf whispered, eyeing us carefully. Never thought I would see the day. You say you're here to help? The extremely weak drow coughed several times and his eyes rolled back into his head, on the verge of unconsciousness again. By the look of things, the guard outside was right, this man didn't have long to live. Still, the elf used his remaining strength to push himself up a little, our party helping him and making sure he was comfortable. I then spent the next few minutes telling the man who we were and why we were here, keeping some of the more personal details to myself, of course. I see, the dark elf whispered, contemplating what he had just heard. Very well. I am Lord de Enzith, and I am the true Lord of Leakley. The true Lord? Ariana asked, our entire party wanting to know more. I've been Lord for nearly a century, the ancient drow continued, still quite weak. But when this aging disease struck, it was easy for my only son Hirikro to usurp my power, occupy the power tower and banish me here, to die. We've met this, son, Kartha commented, recalling his utter rudeness. There is a catastrophe here and all he cares about is wealth and power. That would be my doing, I am afraid. Lord de Enzith responded, bowing his head. Understand, this island has been a prison to us for centuries, the dying dark elf continued. Prisoners have no hope and life becomes a short, painful wait for death. The best we can do is climb above all others and make that wait less uncomfortable. That's been the way of the drow here in Grimtier since Sisla banished us 10 centuries ago. Hearing the name of Sisla once again, and recognizing all the suffering that's occurred to the dark elves here for a millennium, I couldn't help but say something to Sainairs. These dark elves have suffered terribly here for so long, I suggested, disappointed in his religion. Don't these elves deserve better than this? For causing the age of damnation? The Sislan responded, surprised by my disappointment. All humanity was nearly wiped out, these drow deserve endless suffering for what they did. About to get into it with Sainairs, Lord de Enzith began coughing again, so bad this time that he spit up a little blood. Kartha began a spell to heal him, but the dark elf grabbed her arm and stopped her. Don't waste your magic, you can't cure old age. About that, Redfern continued, needing to know more. This aging sickness that most of the drow here have, do you know anything about that? And how is it that you're still alive? Eswin asked, somewhat insensitive but a good question nonetheless. Being the richest and most powerful elf on the island has its benefits, the Lord responded with half a smile. There is a human mage that lives close to the central forest, his name is Balibus, he cast a spell on me that slowed down the aging effects. Another human, here in Grimtier? Redfern asked, intrigued. And a magic user? He must be powerful to slow down your aging sickness. He's been here for decades, along with his sister O'Fairies, Lord de Enzith continued. They've been looking for something. Promised us that when it was found, they could lead us against the entire inner circle and destroy them for banishing us here. We prepared our army and waited, but it never happened. We should go see this Balibus, Redfern said to me. Lord de Enzith, can you tell us where he is? He built a manor just outside the forest many years ago, the dark elf continued, his voice failing and his body about to pass out. He's probably dead now, the old gods probably destroyed him. And with that, Lord de Enzith slipped back into unconsciousness, his death just days, or even hours away. Kartha pulled a blanket up to keep him warm, then turned to me with a most serious look. I agree with Redfern, we should seek out this Balibus, Kartha concurred. These drow are all doomed if we stay here in Leakley any longer. The words of Kartha seemed to resonate with everyone in the party. Agreeing that it was time to leave the city and find this Balibus mage, I looked down on the actual Lord de Enzith one last time and then led my heroes out of the regal jail cell and back to the entrance of the building. Stepping out of the jail, I nodded to the guard here who let us see the Lord in the first place, thankful for the opportunity to learn more. The guard nodded respectfully back in return, the encounter coming to a close. Now, we just needed to figure out how to leave the city, as we couldn't go back through the closed main gate to the north. As we had explored everything north of us, we decided to follow the road east, leading us to a darker, more broken down area of the city. A variety of older buildings and warehouses lined the streets here, several seedy and suspicious dark elven characters eyeing our every move. If we had come to buy and sell on the Leakley black market, this was likely the place to do so. Doing some initial exploration, I sensed that a significant number of dark elves lived in squalor throughout this area, dozens of older, miserable eyes watching us from the shadows. It appears this area of the city is the oldest, Redfern observed, pointing about. These buildings should be condemned and razed to the ground. Asking around, I soon found a dark merchant who was buying and selling with several similar shady characters. As we advanced, however, a small gang of ruffians spoiling for a fight began to push us around, demanding to know our business here. Accosting us were 7 dark elf assassins and 2 dark elf magic users, who we quickly defeated to send them on their way. Rather impressed with how we had handled the drow adept assassins, the dark merchant made his way to us, surrounded by additional dark elf thugs. Well done, the merchant began, seemingly sincere. Now, what is it you wish to buy? Or have you come to sell me one of your little trinkets? I am interested either way. Would you have a bag of holding we could purchase? I asked, wanting to provide Eswin with a much easier way to haul everything the warrior was carrying. But of course, the dark merchant returned with half a smile. And for you, I will only charge 2,500 gold pieces. How does that sound? I agreed. The transaction was made and Eswin thanked me for the bag of holding, all his possessions now feeling much lighter upon his back. There's something else we wish to buy, information, Redfern then acknowledged, taking me a little by surprise. I can likely be of help, the dark merchant returned, open-minded to our needs. It will cost you, of course, but what do you want to know? We can't quite figure out how to leave Leakley, Redfern continued. The main gate is closed due to the recent old god attacks. Do you know another way out of the city? I know of a way out, but that nugget of information will cost 250 gold pieces. The dark merchant took my payment, then continued moments later. Around the corner there is an abandoned warehouse. Inside is an old stone stairway leading down into a cellar. There, you will find a tunnel that leads underneath the wall surrounding Leakley and exiting on the other side, that will get you out. However, once you're out, there is no returning to the city. Understood? Got it. Redfern barked, not surprised. Once we're out, we can't get back in. That's fine. I will leave you with some free, final advice, the dark merchant continued, a little more serious. Be very careful once you're outside the walls of Leakley. The island itself is dangerous, especially now that the old gods are again attacking us. Stay away from the island's central forest, as that's where they're coming from. Your best bet is to build a raft and try to escape north to Terius. I thanked the dark merchant again, then followed his advice, leading my party underneath the wall surrounding Leakley. Following the underground tunnel that the dark merchant told us about, we eventually reached a magical one-way door that led outside into the island wilderness beyond. As we emerged outside, the door closed behind us and disappeared. We were now cut off from Leakley and couldn't return. While the tall stone wall surrounding Leakley dominated the view to the east, we otherwise stood in a sea of prairie for as far as the eye could see. A small path led past the city to the northwest, where, after a day's march, lay the manor and forest we were told about. It's nice to have left the city and reached this open prairie, Ariana began with a smile, taking a deep breath to smell the fresh air. Though I feel sorry for all those dark elves back in there. A few of my heroes agreed, Eswin looking around and then heading northwest along the small path here. This seems the only way, the dark-skinned warrior announced, marching the party forward. Hopefully this path will take us to that manor the old lord told us about. All in agreement, we then headed northwest, soon leaving the city of Leakley behind. And that's a wrap of episode number 50, Dark Elf Capital City Part 4. Expect additional episodes every few weeks as the story continues.